Let's talk about some of the rookies in 2024 redraft, though, who might not have the best time in 2024. We might love the talent, but maybe the situation does not necessarily lend itself to the opportunity. And I want to start with a big name here, and the big name is Brock Bowers, because I think as far as the talent, we can all agree the talent is for real. The question is, can O'Connell and Minshew be those guys to support the talent of Brock Bowers to make him relevant in fantasy in 2024 leagues? So Brett, right now he is currently as the tight end 12. That means he's a tight end 1. Do you think that the support system can get him to that level in 2024?
So what's Mayer?
Mayer, I wasn't prepared for that. 27 currently.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. That I didn't expect it to be that big of a difference.
Well, I'm gonna give you the 12 personnel right here to make the decision.
See, that's the thing is I think they took Brock not to be the Y tight end. Like Mayer's the Y. So when they're in 11, Mayer's going to be on the field unless it's like a true passing down and they want to use Brock as a big slot. But like first and second down 12 personnel packages, I don't think Brock's going to be on the field because he's more of a move tight end, a big slot, an H-back type. He's not going to be somebody who's going to be digging you out, digging out a defensive end on first and second down. That's going to be Michael Mayer's thing. So that's where I'm a little bit hesitant to take Bowers as TE12 because if a lot of the production for tight ends typically comes off of play action, like hard play action on first and second down where we're hitting guys in the seams, we're hitting them on crossing routes, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's going to be like Brock Bowers' role. If anything, if he's getting hit off play action, he's going to be like bluffing a sift block and getting hit in the flat and, trying to make stuff happen after the catch, which he's phenomenal after the catch. But I think I don't think he's going to get as many early down snaps from 11 personnel as people think. Maybe if they want to be a committed 12 personnel team, he'll get a bunch of snaps there. You move him around, you put him in the slot again, you hit him in the flat, all that kind of stuff. But boy, that big of a difference between Mayer, who I thought had a pretty nice start to his career, and Bowers, this doesn't read the same as like Knox and Kincaid. Like I think Mayer's just a better player than Knox. And so if anything, they might cannibalize each other a little bit and have both of them finish outside the top 12, especially with all the young tight ends that have entered the league recently that I think can fill out that top 12. If anything, I might go Sinnott if we're trying to like find a top 12 rookie tight end.
Well, don't spoil things for the audience. We'll get to him in a second. But to your point, Brett, you were talking about being clever and using Bowers as H-back, using him in the slot. Debro, we heard a lot of that noise about Kincaid possibly last year too, and I don't think we got as much of it as we wanted, and we certainly didn't get it early enough until injuries really struck. So are you buying that, or is Bowers, unfortunately, maybe in 2024, a bit of a bust until they make some harder decisions or maybe upgrade the quarterback?
I've been so on the fence with Bowers. As soon as they announced the landing spot, we talked about this on the draft show when we were live, man. I felt like somebody just gut punched me. As soon as we got that landing spot, I was like, this is nightmare fuel. Like, I was like, this is, and it's twofold. Exactly what Brett is talking about. How much of a snap rate is he going to get? How much of routes per dropback are we going to see for Bowers? What's the role going to be versus Mayer? How much are they going to live in 12 personnel versus 11 personnel? Like, yes, the Raiders probably should live in 12 personnel, but I've also lived in a world where I've seen Luke Getsy call plays for multiple seasons, and I don't trust him as an offensive coordinator as far as I could freaking throw the man. So if there was any offensive coordinator out there that I'm worried is there a way to screw this up? Okay, Luke Getsy says, hold my beer. And that's what scares me, man. It's like, so whether you're talking about in redraft or dynasty rookie drafts, I'm not paying up for the premium for Brock Bowers. Yes, these guys that we're going to talk about later as far as in dynasty rookie drafts at the tight end position, I will be garnering them over paying up for Bowers, and as well as a redraft, because I think one way or another, regardless of whatever time frame we're looking at, whether it's in season this year, much less the next calendar year for Brock Bowers, I think his value is not going to, I think it's going to drop. And I think it's not going to end this year as high as it is right now while he's still living off the hype, the deserved hype of his talent, because there's so many outs for this to go wrong, whether you talk about snaps, routes, Luke Getsy, or we haven't even discussed the quarterback play because Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are not exactly barn burners either.
I would start at the quarterback play being suspect, but I want to move on to some wide receivers too. We're going to take these in groupings. I wanted this first grouping here is Rome Odunze and Ricky Pearsall. So in 2024, obviously both these guys have a little bit of a struggle because they have 2 wide receivers ahead of them. So, Debro, because of the way the depth chart looks now, are you fading Odunze and Pearsall in 2024?
Because of how the depth charts sit at the time of this recording, yes, I will be lower on
I'm
both
Derek
of
Brown,
them.
and I approve this message. That was very good. I wanted you to thank me for my question. That would have been the only thing you could have done better. There's nothing I hate more than a politician who thanks people for their question first.
To do that, I was just going to wrap it up nicely at the end and transition to Brett because it's what we do as professionals here. But I digress. But with both of these guys, it comes down to not only the talent in their rooms, because that's where we lead the conversation off. In Chicago,
it's elite talent. It's not just 2 dudes.
Yes,
we're talking about 2 fantastic
Keenan
receivers,
Allen,
right?
No fall off last year, still an elite target earner. DJ Moore is still that guy, and both of these roles, it's like the other part or piece we could talk about Chicago is. And again, going back to personnel usages, Shane Waldron likes his 12 personnel. They brought in Gerald Everett. They're going to use a lot of varying personnels. When you want to talk about 12 and 21 personnel, this is not a team that I don't know if they necessarily live in 11 personnel where we're talking about them as a 90%, 94%, whatever, like high 80s% of 11 personnel for Chicago. So that not only the volume, but the snap concerns for Rome Odunze. The talent's, there's no question there. Rome is a freaking stud. He was always in the conversation of the top 3 guys. You could have made the conversation that he could be the wide receiver 1 of this class, and I won't push back against anybody that make that conversation. And I know that's a spicy meatball to chew on, but he's got the talent for it, man. So we're going to see that, I think, more in 2025 for him, but the same thing can be said for Ricky Pearsall. Now, the time of you're watching this, maybe San Francisco has managed to pull the string on a trade. Maybe Ayuk is gone. Maybe Debo is gone. I don't know what's going to happen for that team, but I am very interested to find out because, yes, it is a crowded house in San Francisco right now. And could that easily spell that Ayuk is gone? As long as he's there, there's just not enough passing volume to go around for all of these guys. I think Pearsall could be the present, but we're going to need injuries or a trade to happen for that to be the case. Because, again, going back to personnel usage, and I know we're getting heavy about that here, but it needs to be discussed. San Francisco loves 12 and 21 personnel just as much as all these other teams do. And and I'm really curious where your head is at on this, Brett. Does the drafting of Ricky Pearsall, could that be a signal that, look, if they keep these guys, do we get more 11 personnel in the 49ers offense this year?
That's a great question. Brett, what's the answer? Because you're the man with the answer for this.
Let me put a thought into your guys' head real quick.
Oh, that's a dangerous thing.
Oh.
Do you know what the cap savings is if Debo gets traded after June 1st?
Ooh. No, I do not, actually.
I haven't looked at that. I've looked at a lot of cap numbers. I haven't looked at that one. What is it, Brett?
$22.5 million.
Woo! Ooh!
So,
wow.
And if Debo gets traded after June 1st and they save $22.5 million, they can turn around and give that to Brandon.
Right.
And Brandon is the better receiver, right?
And it's going to take something like that to do it because the way receiver market's been the last couple of years, that's where it's going.
And think back to when they lost the Super Bowl. What was a key component of them losing the Super Bowl? Debo couldn't separate against man coverage from Trent McDuffie. They drafted separators because I
was going to say not handing the ball off to Christian McCaffrey more, but what do I know?
I mean, both really,
but
right?
Both. The answer is both. Yes.
Well, it's called sitting on a lead and stop pretending like you always have to show yourself to be the smartest man in the room, Kyle Shanahan. But that's a story for another podcast.
They've made it work with physicality and yak and all that good stuff,
right?
And they still have that component. Brandon Ayuk's great after the catch. Kittle's still great after the catch. Christian, blah blah blah. But when they absolutely needed their number 2 receiver to separate. Couldn't separate. Debo has a very unique skill set, but that is not what his skill set is. And you could kind of tell by who they drafted in this class that they're trying to get separators. And I think with Christian in the backfield there and obviously taking Isaac Guerrero, they don't need Debo, the running back, that much anymore, like they did in past years before the running back room was settled. And so they had to use Debo as essentially like their running back too, because it's like, we got to run outside zone. We don't have anybody that can do it. All right, put Debo in the backfield. They don't need that as much anymore. So you can replace a lot of Debo's screen and sweep production, everything like that in the aggregate with the guys they already got. But what they needed was a separator. And if you're looking at the contract, I kind of feel like they're planning on offloading Debo post June 1 when financially it makes sense for more people, get what they can get out of it, use the money, pay Brandon, pay Brock eventually, and then have Pearsall be your slot receiver / number 2 receiver. I kind of feel like that's what they're going for here.
Well, that would certainly...
I love that point, Brett, because to your point, the box score stats don't give it, but if you look at the deeper analytics, to your point about his separation ability, 90th percentile in separation percentage last year, 81st percentile in separation percentage versus single coverage. Absolutely agree.
All right, I want to talk about 2 more wide receivers here. Brian Thomas Jr. and Adonai Mitchell. So these 2 guys were selected. Obviously, they were big names that were discussed a lot in the draft. Brett, the trouble is, again, maybe they're a little bit one-dimensional. Does that dimension create a problem in 2024 redraft leagues, because it's a kind of boom or bust in a lot of sense for those 2 guys?
For AD Mitchell?
Yeah, potentially in that offense.
See, I love AD in this offense.
Okay, let's talk that, because you're the first person I've heard that really kind of talk to that in that sense. I understand why. You're talking about Richardson's big arm, I assume, and that potential. But again, is that something you can count on a weekly basis, or do you think this is one of these guys? It's like, oh, he had 4 or 5 really great games, and the other times it was crickets, because that can kill you in fantasy.
So I am speaking with a little bit of bias here, right? Because I had a wonderful dinner the night of Caleb Williams' Pro Day. I had a wonderful dinner with Will Hewlett and really the whole team who's responsible for developing Caleb. But Anthony Richardson is also one of their clients, and Brock Purdy. They all work out in Florida down there near Jacksonville with Will. And, we were talking obviously about a bunch of stuff with Caleb and, getting some good insight into him. And it just kind of reaffirmed my belief that he was QB1 in this class with a bullet. But we also spent a long time talking about AR, and we spent a long time talking about Brock. But the conversation specifically about Anthony Richardson made me horrified as a Texans fan. Like, I don't think people are prepared for what they're about to see in Indy this year.
Oh, I am with you. Debro knows this. What have I been talking about since the season ended? I said, I've got all my shares and wagering and things like that in the Colts, because I think the Colts could be extremely dangerous this year.
This kid's a mutant. All right. And the stories they're telling me about the work ethic and just what he is as a CEO of that team. Like, I'm telling you right now, the Colts offense is going to be absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. He's not coming for division crown. He's coming for Super Bowl. And to the point where it's so funny. When he went down with injury and, CJ was doing his thing and the night that CJ won Rookie of the Year, he's sitting there like, damn, I really thought I could have won Rookie of the Year this year. Guess I'll have to win MVP. That was the first sentence out of his mouth.
Oh, baby.
The first sentence out of Anthony Richardson's mouth was, guess I got to win MVP now. So I'm telling you, when you have somebody this talented, who's this motivated and works this hard, that Colts offense is going to be something special. And they took AD to supercharge it. Okay. Because he is a true X receiver on the outside that can beat press man coverage, that can attack every single blade of grass on the field. He's a great route runner, less than a 1% drop percentage. People talk about the attitude in the interviews. Keep in mind, he's type 1 diabetic, right? And if you know anybody with type 1 diabetes, they can have pretty big problems with like mood swings and something like that until their blood sugar regulates about halfway through the day. And so if you're thinking back to when all the interviews take place at the combine, like I was walking around the combine, drills don't start till afternoon. All the interviews are in the morning before his blood sugar is regulated. So if there was any sort of like mood issues or he felt really tired or something, maybe distant in the interviews, I more chalk that up to the fact that, hey, it's 8 a.m. and he's type 1 diabetic. Like, and the Colts said, like, he's a great kid. And people I talked to at the Texas program say he's an awesome kid. He's a hard worker, great practice player, shows up, does his job on game days, because guess when the games are? Afternoon. right? And so I don't subscribe to the issue or to like the whole attitude issues thing, because I really do think it just came down to like he did interviews at the absolute worst possible time for him to do interviews at, in a new space, in a new environment where he's not comfortable, he's dog tired, and oh, by the way, he's having blood sugar issues at 8 a.m, like most type 1 diabetics do. So I think he's a freakish talent getting thrown the ball by another freakish talent. They're both highly motivated. They're both pissed off. And you're getting AD Mitchell at what, wide receiver 40? Something like that? Like,
I'll double check for you right now, but it's definitely in that range. Debro, let's talk about those guys. Let's talk about, maybe you want to mention Thomas, because we talked a lot about Mitchell. 63 currently right now on the book board is where Mitchell is in PPR. So again, I expect that to move up a little bit closer to 50 by the time we get to, mid-July. But Debro, again, look, potential is all there, but we're talking about practicality. We're talking about rookies, and we start talking about exactly, what the roles are in this offense. So it's not necessarily a target monster kind of role either. So does that scare you when it comes to Thomas potentially and or Mitchell, in your opinion?
It scares me to an extent of both of them. I've been on record, like I view AD a little bit different. Like, I think he's going to have massive weeks. And to Brett's point, the reason that if you saw hiccups in Shane Steichen's offense last year is the big thing that he did in Philly and previous stops, and he's going to dial it up this year in Indy, is creating explosives. Alec Pierce just could not do that. Last year they tried and they took the deep shots and didn't work. Didn't happen. So now you get AD Mitchell, and we can debate all day like X and what the roles are going to be versus Pittman and stuff, but AD Mitchell is going to get downfield looks. Anthony Richardson's going to heave them. We're going to have fireworks in this offense. And now I have a few more questions about AD Mitchell and the target share in that offense, but is he going to have ceiling weeks? Absolutely. Is he going to be a huge boost to this offense? Absolutely. And I look at it in the same similar vein to what Brian Thomas Jr. can offer the Jacksonville Jaguars. In that, well, first of all, we know Trent Baalke, it's all size, it's all measurables, and what can you be, not versus who you are right now. And that's a perfect way to frame Brian Thomas Jr. because he's more limited as a route runner. Brett's talked about how the LSU, the construction of that offense, and it was go routes, it was slot fades, and that's all you saw. And a lot of that was Brian Thomas Jr. And so this entirety of this process, it's like, I don't hate Brian Thomas Jr. I need to make that clear for everybody out there.
No, I think you made that clear.
I talk about him in the way that I think we should be referencing him as to where his game is, what he provides an offense, and do I see some duplicity in his addition to this offense when you already have Gabe Davis, who does a lot of the same things that freaking Brian Thomas Jr. does. So I am lower specifically on Brian Thomas Jr. versus these two guys. And I said this before, Joey, and I'm going to say it again. The guy that this opens up everything for and the best value out of that Jacksonville passing attack now and moving forward this year is Christian Kirk, because they're going to stretch the field. Yep. They're going to create underneath. When Christian Kirk was the guy last year in a full-time role, he was the wide receiver 19 in fantasy points per game. I don't know, Joey, you're going to have to tell me where his ADP or where he's ranked right now, because I'm telling you right now, it's not damn near high enough as it should be, and his production is going to outpace it this year.
29, my friend, behind Malik Neighbors.
Okay,
so
give me all the Christian Kirk.
There you go.
I need all of it in my life. I need all of it.
All right, I want to go through a couple more guys here before we transition to some rookies who could emerge over time in the 2024 season. Sometimes draft capital of a team ends up creating too much hype around certain players. I just want to see if we can debunk that potentially with Xavier Legette of Carolina. Then you have Jalen Polk in New England. Let's not spend too much time on that. And then Malachi Corley for the Jets. Debro, again, there was a certain amount of draft capital here, and also depending on how you look at it, certain teams with, big time profiles in the NFL, New York team here, the New England Patriots high profile team. Do you see any way where these guys aren't potential busts in 2024? I
think I see an easier path for Legette outpacing what the expectations are for him, because and part of this is all tied to Bryce Young and what can he be this year? Because if we're talking about can these guys pay off, can they be more than what we're expecting, you're tying that back to Bryce Young. How good can he be? Can he support multiple weapons in this offense, and what does that look like? We know Deontay Johnson's going to get a ton of looks. He gets open, he separates. It's great. Adam Thielen is aging, and is he still good for who he is and at the age that he's operating? Sure. But Xavier Legette, I've come around a lot more on him in the process, and especially the closer, especially with this landing spot, than I was immediately at the beginning. Because, okay, late breakout, and you can tell yourself a story if you go up and you look at everything Xavier Legette's gone through in his life, the backstory with that. All I'll say, if Legette breaks out, I don't think it's a small breakout. I think it's a massive breakout. So, because if you look at when he finally got on the field last year at South Carolina, high-end competition in the SEC, Spencer Rattler being his number one, he was 11th in yards per route run, 18th in PFF receiving grade last year. So, the high end is there for him. Now, I don't know if he achieves that, but I think that if you're wanting to take the upside swing in the later rounds of drafts, Xavier Legette is the guy that I'll go with, because it's not Jalen Polk. And I've been characterized as a Jalen Polk hater. I view him as not a high ceiling guy. I think he's going to be a slot player. I think he's going to be a very solid slot receiver in the NFL, considering the constitution of that Washington offense. A lot of bunch formations. 43% of his targets came via the slot last year, and that's not even counting the looks where, if you go watch the film, him in stack formations, and he's not the top end guy. He's the guy that's getting the off coverage in the bunch. So I'm lower on Polk. I don't see him as an outside guy. I especially do not see him as an X receiver. If I'm taking upside swings, I could see Legette paying off. I don't see it for Polk.
Corley, Polk, Legette. Brett, do you see any of these guys paying off from whatever hype might be going around their teams?
It depends on where you're getting him at. I think Legette, if he's the X for Carolina, you got Deontay at the Z, and then Thielen is the slot. It's tough to project exactly how many targets he's going to get. Like, it almost might be after Thielen's gone, we might finally see what Legette can do as like a true number one, just because I think Bryce trusts Adam on third down. So like, I don't think he's going to get him much third down work. And I think Deontay is such a good separator that I think he's going to take a lot of targets as well. I think Legette, honestly, as a rookie, is going to be more of the big play guy and the clear out guy, even though he's more talented than that. I just look at the situation around him, and he's more of like a dynasty stash for me based on what I think he will be in the future, more so than redraft. If I'm looking for a receiver that went in that range of the draft for redraft, it's Ladd McConkey. I'm actually surprised we haven't talked about him yet.
Oh,
but
we will.
He went around that area, and I think Ladd is the one.
Oh, he's being saved for a special segment of the program today, so we'll get to him. We'll get to him in a second.
It's called a tease.
Real quick here, Blake Corum, drafted by the Rams, obviously with Kyren Williams last year. Same thing, like big college career in terms of national championship and all that stuff. But like at the end of the day, Brett, do you think people should be hyped about him in 2024, or is he just waiver wire fodder for the time being?
I struggle with it because it's such a good fit. Like, it's a great pick for the Rams. Horrible for fantasy football.
Right.
Agreed.
Like, are any of these guys going to get more than 10 to 12 touches? Like, probably not. Like, they're all going to cannibalize each other. And I hate that for fantasy. But I love it if I was a Rams fan. Like, it's such a perfect fit, like hand in glove fit system-wise.
All right.
Good
well,
player.
Here's another question for you. What about, because I already know D-Bro's take on this, but I'd love to hear yours about Bo Nix. Because Bo Nix is going to be a guy that's going to start for the Denver Broncos. And at some point, I mean, where it's going to be sink or swim for him, there will be people who will look at it in 2024 and say, well, he's a starting quarterback for the Broncos, so in Superflex he's viable. Do you think that's a healthy way of looking at Bo Nix?
Let me put it this way. If this year's Bo Nix was next to last year's Kenny Pickett in Superflex, I would take this year's Bo Nix. I think he's going to be probably around quarterback 18 to 20. If I had to get, lower end QB2.
That's actually a better number than I thought you were going to give me. I thought you were going to give me like 20 to 25 or something.
I actually liked Bo Nix a lot as a prospect. I had him in the same tier as JJ McCarthy. And, I had him pegged to the Broncos at 12.
Derek, I want you to stay on the show regardless of the fact that Brett just said that.
I'm holding it in. I didn't even make a face until you pushed me.
But Brett, to your point, now I know how to get rid of Derek whenever I want to.
I like Bo Nix. I really did. I thought he was a good fit for the Broncos, mainly because I think he's old and mature enough to put up with Sean Payton. But I think it's going to work out well.
All right, there you have it, everybody.